All right, so job satisfaction. All right, I found this little image on the internet, but it's good. So I thought, why create it myself? And I can find this blurry object to use off the internet. So we've got mentally challenging work, equitable rewards, supportive working condition, supportive colleagues, personality, job fit. These all contribute to job satisfaction. And this is actually a really good model of the factors that go into job satisfaction. If you're really interested in any of this job satisfaction stuff and any of this employment stuff, you can always take industrial and organizational psychology. At the moment, I teach it in Springs only, but it's a really good class. So it goes into all this work related stuff in a lot more detail. So with job satisfaction, if any of these is sort of lower, it's going to reduce job satisfaction. So if any of these, let's say that the job doesn't really fit your personality. Maybe it's a job that requires you to be outgoing and you're really, that's not naturally your way of being. That's going to reduce job satisfaction. And it may be one of those factors that helps to, sort of propel you towards searching for something else, right? Like any one of these being lower will contribute to a person starting to consider a job search. So let's move on to another kind of motivation, which is marriage and finding, I'm calling it marriage, but, different people might mean different things by these terms that I'm talking about. When I'm talking about marriage, I'm talking about literally a declaration between two people before their friends and family. Maybe it has a legal component, maybe it has a religious component to it, where they are committing to each other. Every society that's ever been studied or that exists currently has some kind of marriage. It may not be a state sanctioned thing. It might not be a religious ceremony. There are a lot of different ways that it's implemented, but every culture has some kind of marriage. Every culture does. Why? Why would every culture have this thing, right? Like this seems like it's a pretty basic human motive for every culture to have some variation of it. So what are the benefits? There's got to be benefits, right? Well, marriage is a situation where you have two people who are bonded to each other as a result of this commitment, and they're probably pretty close to the same age, right? Whereas when you were, the other time that you're this bonded to anyone is probably when you were being raised by your parents. And, they're older, they know more, they can tell you what to do and so on. Your marriage partner is your same level. And so tends to be more reciprocal than the relationship that you had with your parents on average. It's not perfect and different people have different ways of manifesting their marital bonds, but on average we see, more reciprocal than what we had with our parents. It's a more committed bond than we have with, let's say, our siblings, right? If your sibling really drives you crazy, you may go a while without talking to them. You may say, that's it, right? Whereas this person who you've got a sort of societally sanctioned commitment to, you're sort of, it's a different level even than what you have with your siblings, and certainly a different level than what you have with what I'll call lovers, sort of dating partners or people who, maybe you have, some degree of sexual contact with, whatever, but you're not committed to. Having a marital commitment has this sort of like, we're required to at least attempt to figure things out compared to other relationships that we've been in. So I thought I'd share with you some research on the correlation between marriage and happiness. So this first one, the darker bars are men's responses, the lighter bars are women's responses. The left-hand side are people who are married, the right-hand side are people who are unmarried, and the y-axis, for whatever reason, is cut off, but what we have is happiness. So happiness, it doesn't matter what sex you are, they have the exact same numbers, but what matters is whether you're married or not. You see that people who are married have 20 points higher than people who are not married on whatever measure of happiness was being used. Still staying with happiness as our dependent variable. Now we have married on the left and unmarried on the right, but we broke them down by age. And so you see the darkest green now is the 18 to 29 year olds. The lightest green is 30 to 49. black is 50 to 64, and white is 65 and older. And what you see is, again, not much variability within the groups. Little bit over there on the unmarried side, but not that much variability going on between the groups. The biggest difference is married versus unmarried. The one difference is in the unmarried who are 65 and older. And here's a good time for me to mention that when it says unmarried, it's lumping together people who have never been married, people who are divorced, people who are widowed. So that's a bit of a confound, but it is what it is. Okay. Again, married versus unmarried. And now we have whether you have kids or not. So dark green is they have kids who are under 18. Light green is kids who are over the age of 18. And black is no kids. And so you see for married people, there's not much variability regarding kids or not. It seems to look like it doesn't really matter. For the unmarried people, largely it doesn't matter. There's a little bit of dip for unmarried people who have kids under the age of 18, probably related to the stress of having, kids under the age of 18 and only one adult to sort of deal with all the needs. So that's the one variable there that kind of is altered. Okay, now this is kind of like the thing I was showing you in the last video where 0 is the baseline. On the y-axis here, we have 0 as a baseline. And then we have, so if you're above the baseline, it means that your well-being is greater than the baseline. And if it's below, then it means it's lower. And so in this first grouping, we have people who are cohabiting. In the next one, we have people who are single. In the next one, we have people who are widowed or surviving civil partners. So these are people who had a committed relationship but lost their partner to death. And then we have on the final one, people who are divorced or separated. And so what we're seeing is the baseline 0 would be the level that married people have. Okay. Everybody is below the line. So that means that they are experiencing less in the teal bars, life satisfaction. In the orange bars, feeling that they are worthwhile. In the green bars, this is them reporting whether they felt happy yesterday. And then the one bar that's above the line, so that they're having more of it compared to people who were married, is whether they felt anxious yesterday. So for all of the groups, they felt less of the positive emotions and more of the negative emotion of anxiety. Now you can see, depending on what kind of single person you are, you have more or less, right? So cohabiting couples have the closest match to married couples on the happiness measures. The singles all look fairly similar, but you can see a person who's single, never married, has a happier, like more life satisfaction, they feel more worthwhile. They were more likely to be happy yesterday than people who were widowed or the surviving member of a civil partnership, or the people who were divorced or separated. Okay, so I do have to point out that on average, cohabiting and single people are probably younger than widowed or divorced people. And so keep that in mind, that there might be something having to do with age that could be sort of interacting with marital status. So keep that in mind. All right, now this is a very big zoom in of the U-shaped curve of marital happiness. Now I didn't think to do it on the left side. I should put the actual numbers that are associated with the happiness scores. The difference between this high point over here on the left side and this low point, that's down here in the middle, if we were to put a y-axis, we would see that it's on a scale of 1 to 10. The difference between these two things is like 0.3. It's not very much. If you zoom out, you can't see that this looks like a U at all. But I like this picture, and I chose to include this picture because it is important to note that there is a slight dip about 25 years into marriage. And if you look through what's going on as we go down the hill experiencing less happiness down the side of this hill towards the 25 years, there's a lot of, children and career advancements and financial issues and things that are going on that are stressful. And then as the children leave home, we're starting to gain financial stability, and we start having grandchildren, and then retirement approaches, so that by the time we get, notice this is drawn like it's symmetrical, but this left side took 25 years to get here and the right side only took 35. Only took 10 to get to 35. So obviously this is not drawn to scale. But as all these things are happening and life is sort of stabilizing out, you find that people are at the highest level that they have been since the honeymoon period. Now, again, let's put this into perspective, that in reality, the difference is not very big between the honeymoon period and the 25-year mark as far as the happiness that's expressed. But there are stresses in a marriage that can make things a lot more difficult, let's be honest. And a lot of it has to do with raising children, establishing your career, and trying to make sure that all the finances are working out, given all the needs and all the things that are going on. So, that's super important, and we can't ignore that component. I thought it would be interesting also to talk a little bit about how there are gender differences in the expectations of people who are entering marriage in what they would like to get from the marriage, like what they're thinking it's going to be married. Women, on the one hand, they say, well, they think there's going to be a lot of intimacy. And when they say intimacy, they mean I'm going to get to talk about my emotions. I'm going to get to express my emotions in this safe circumstance where this person who loves me is going to, care that I'm feeling these things and I'm telling them about these things. For men, when they think about the intimate bond that they're expecting to have in a marriage, they're expecting, a person who's going to be able to provide practical help. Well, my spouse is going to be over there holding up the other end of the 2x4 that I'm trying to, build this shed with or whatever. Hey, look, we shared experiences. We built that shed together, or we went for a hike, whatever. And intimacy also means just being together. So it doesn't necessarily mean talking or experiencing emotions. It's about being together, doing stuff together, helping each other, things like that. So we start off from sort of a different perspective as far as what intimacy means. What happens as a result of that is that for the average male, their needs for intimacy tend to be met by just normal wifely behavior. Yes, I'm going to help you do stuff. Yeah, we're going to do stuff together. We're going to spend time together. That's true. That's going to happen. And so for men, they're like, this is a very happy, intimate situation as we sit on the couch together, or we drive somewhere together and things like that. Women are less likely to have their needs met and are more likely to express dissatisfaction about the level of intimacy and how they communicate and when they communicate and how often they communicate. So there's like this mismatch oftentimes that can happen between men and women's expectations for marriage. Just as a side point, it's really a good practice for women to sort of expect that most of their emotional work and stuff like that's probably going to happen with their girlfriends. So it's really important for females to not abandon their friends as soon as they find a partner, right? But instead to try and keep those relationships going. What does marriage do for health? Well, getting some more charts for you. So we've got the different kinds of marital statuses again: married, never married, living with a partner, divorced or separated, widowed. And then the percent that are reporting in the dark areas, excellent or very good health. The grayish bars are the percent that said they experience good health. And then the orange parts are those who report that they're experiencing fair or poor health. So you see that the married people have the, best health, the least amount of fair or poor health. And that, the widowed have the lowest levels of excellent or good health and have more of the fair or poor health. And that the never married, living with a partner, divorced or separated are kind of all, like together with each other in the middle there. Again, I want to point out that there's a possible confound of age with the never married and the living with a partner. The divorced or separated, I would expect to be the same age as the married, or maybe a little older than the married. And certainly the widowed, on average, I would expect them to be older than the marrieds, who should be on average older than the never married or the living with a partner. So keep that in mind, that age might be sort of modifying some of this. All right. So why? Let's assume the age thing I mentioned, let's take that out. Let's assume that's controlled for. One argument for why married people tend to experience better health than unmarried people is that it's possible that healthy people may attract a mate more easily, that possibly they just literally are healthier, and that there's, sorry, I'm going to mute my phone, and that there's that's the confound, that it's not about age. It's about, naturally healthy people might be more able to attract a mate. Maybe once people are married, they adopt a healthier and safer lifestyle. Maybe they eat better. Maybe they're more likely to exercise. One of the reasons why men who get married before the age of 25 have lower automobile insurance than men who don't get married before the age of 25 is that when men get married, they tend to do less speeding. They tend to do fewer donuts in intersections. They do fewer exhibitions of power. Like, all the things that can result in accidents are less common once a man is married than when he's a single man. And so that healthier, safer lifestyle might manifest itself in these health ratings that people are giving. If you do have something go wrong, you're less likely to actually have to stay in the hospital if you're married, because you have a ready-made spouse living at home who's really interested in you recovering and they want to take care of you. And so it could be that, right, that you have sort of a ready-made, nursemaid that can help take care of you. On average, married couples earn more than single people, and certainly more than divorced on average. And so maybe they have a higher standard of living, and that maybe manifests itself in having better health insurance, and they can afford better food, and they can pay for a gym membership, and like other kinds of things that can, downhill provide for better health. They provide company and social support, even if you're not talking and sharing the intimacy that the wife might want. Being together, supporting each other, being nearby, those kinds of things may help to manage health, right? So you have better health in the long run. All right, let's go ahead and take a little break here, and let's talk about, the elephant in the room. A lot of marriages don't succeed, so how can they have all these benefits? So let's talk about predicting success in marriage in the next video.